At the time of recording, of the 105 whole life orders issued in the United Kingdom over the last 40 years, only 4 of them have been females. The most recent addition was dubbed a killer nurse for the alarming and heartbreaking number of newborns that died in her care. Another, together with her partner, terrorised an entire region as they sexually assaulted and murdered 5 children before burying their bodies amongst the moors. Whilst another, acting alongside her husband, used their house of horrors to hold captive, torture, rape and murder at least a dozen females between the ages of 8 and 27. But today's focus was a killer of men. It is believed that, over a period of 10 days in March of 2013, 30-year-old Joanna Dennehy went on a killing spree across the city of Peterborough, butchering 3 men in the process, before discarding their remains in nearby ditches. Here, she claimed to have got a taste for it, and that the feeling was Moreish. Not satisfied by the Peterborough Spree, Joanna travelled 155 miles to the city of Hereford, where the brutal and completely random attacks started once again. In the space of less than 2 weeks, 3 men were dead, 2 men were severely injured, and Joanna Dennehy was on the run. This ultimately resulted in Joanna becoming recognised and widely regarded as one of Britain's most terrifying serial killers.
Hello and welcome to I Could Murder a Podcast. We are back once again with a brand new case, and it is one that explores the area of Peterborough. I'm joined by Benny Carter, the little man.
It's great to be here. Thank you so much. It's great to be a bit closer to home, in a way, before you then realise the implication of this case, which is, very, very sad, very, very disturbing, but happy to be back nonetheless. The series is kicking on. Producer Dan is back in black.
Yes.
He's wearing white.
No, the studio walls.
I'm in a white t-shirt, but black walls, yeah, very good. Very interesting case today. It's very close to home, isn't it? I guess naturally, you kind of distance yourself from these sorts of cases, don't you? Well, any sort of horrible case, but the fact it was kind of round the corner from us is makes you shiver.
Don't you find it a bit spooky? A bit spookier, the fact it's closer?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, definitely. Well, today's case, it is Joanna Dennehy, the Peterborough Ditch Murders. I was quite surprised. I think I had heard of the case. There's some infamous pictures that go along with this case. But I completely forgot or was unaware that it happened in Peterborough until doing the research for the case. And yeah, it made me go, ooh. Like, when someone walks in your grave, you go, oh, have a bit of a shudder.
Yes, yeah. Eerie little shudder.
Definitely that.
I'm the same as you, Tom. I feel like I've said this for a few cases. I remember getting news alerts about it, but I don't remember the news alerts referencing how close to home they were. I felt like for some reason it was a further north case, but it's not.
And correct me if I'm wrong, it'd be interesting to see what you boys think of this. Probably Joanna Dennehy is someone who I'd class as probably the most violent, bloodthirsty women we've ever covered on the series.
I would definitely agree. I think that when we get towards the end of the episode and discuss motive, that's what makes this case to me so terrifying and so scary, is that it was kind of just because she wanted to.
So blasé, big manipulator. People said that, she was able to entice men, and I don't think I'm being too controversial by saying I don't think she's enticing them via the way she looks. It's more about her aura and how she's able to get people to do what she wants. And and even detectives would go on to say that they found her captivating and even believed they must be in the wrong room with the wrong person for the case they're dealing with, because they couldn't picture her committing these heinous crimes. But yes, we're not going to waffle on. We're going to get right into the case. That is a very dark one, but let's get into it.
So this week it is the Joanna Dennehy case, the Peterborough Ditch Murders, the murder of Kevin Lee, the murder of Lucas Slabazeski, the murder of John Chapman, and the Bonnie wannabe. And I also saw one article that said the Dennehy killing spree. One article said that.
Is that yours?
Yeah.
That's one of the best ones you've done, to be fair.
Oh,
usually you say something rhymes when it really doesn't, and that does. Ben, can you remind the listeners again, what was your cryptic clue for this week's case?
It was Kool and the Gang and Brian tried to warn you. Kool and the Gang, Joanna, great song. Brian Dennehy, Joanna Dennehy. And tried to warn you about her because, stay back.
If anyone got that,
I think that's fairly attainable.
It kind of works, but it's very difficult still.
Kool and the Gang, I'm not very familiar with Kool and the Gang's hits.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this episode airs on future Ben's birthday, so maybe we'll play some Kool and Gang there. Happy birthday, Ben.
38 this year.
Cracking on, boy.
Yeah.
Doesn't look bad for it, though.
Fuck's sake. Fair play to you, man.
Yeah, cheers. We'll play some Kool and the Gang, hopefully, together.
Yeah, happy birthday, future Ben. Consider this your present and your card.
Joanna Christine Dennehy was born on the 29th of August 1982 in the city of St Albans, Hertfordshire. She was the eldest of two daughters born to Kevin and Kathleen Dennehy, having a younger sister called Maria. Joanna, despite some claims that she would later make, was provided with a relatively straightforward and comfortable childhood. Her father, Kevin, worked as a security guard, whilst her mother, Kathleen, was the manager of a local shop. They raised their family in the small village of Redbourne, nearby the town of Harpenden, currently one of the most expensive places to live in the UK.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things you'll hear very often in the content out there about this case is that she came from a very affluent part of the UK, had a very nice and pleasant childhood. Were a couple of documentaries where one person suggests she was a bit of a bully, but I couldn't find anything else really to support that. But yeah, expensive part of the country, and apparently a lot of footballers live there, or ex-footballers. Jack Wilshere, Craig Charles, not footballer, but Takeshi's Castle. And
Robot Wars.
Robot Wars, of course.
Yeah.
And apparently, as recent as last year, more than 200 millionaires are living in the Harpenden area, that feels like a lot.
That is a lot. Yeah, the documentaries I watched, she seemed to be very manipulative as a child and very but she was feared by a lot of people that she decided to victimise as a kid.
As a child, Joanna was described as very loving, sensitive and affectionate. Her mother Kathleen once recalled that she went into a crying fit after accidentally treading on a worm.
Are you emotional?
Poor worm. She would often have to be comforted by her younger sister whenever she became emotional, with the pair sharing bunk beds together in the family home. The pair, separated by just 2 years, became so close they even invented their own language together. Class, I like that.
We've had that before, I'm pretty sure.
Was it the Enfield Girls? That was a lot of gibberish, wasn't it?
I think it may be. We've also done one about the twins that were in Broadmoor. I think.
Yes,
they possibly did that.
Yeah,
had their own language.
Yeah, fascinating case. Like a lot of young girls, Joanna had a fondness for her collection of dolls. She and her sister would regularly play with their dolls for hours on end. She was especially interested in fashion, makeup, and having her hair in lots of different styles. As she grew older, she had no trouble making new friends, and she started to become more interested in her studies, with a particular fondness for sports. She signed up and started playing for the Roundwood Park School's hockey and netball teams, where she once again fit in really well. Joanna got on so well at school that her parents started paying for private tuition for their daughter, with the family sharing hopes that she might one day go on to become a lawyer. What a different life that would have been. Sadly, as she entered her teenage years, things started to drastically change. As much as there is a lot of focus on her having this perfect family life and perfect, upbringing, nice family home, there are other school friends that described her as a bit of a bully, manipulator. She would apparently force what she referred to as geeks to complete her homework for her. Tom, you mentioned there was something else with regards to people walking home from school.
Yeah, so basically there's some people that she would pick on particularly, and it was more, one of the documentaries I watched, basically someone was saying how she would often emotionally bully them as well. So she would also say about, be careful which way you walk home from school, and other things like that, planting things in their heads, so they'd be worried that she might be waiting for them, so she would go a different way. And all around just kind of, picking the vulnerable people and making their lives a bit hellish, really. So manipulative from a very early age.
So it's not completely clear which came first, but before Joanna turned 15, two new elements were introduced to her life. She started dating a 20-year-old man by the name of John Trina, and apparently she met him whilst he was out walking his dog, and she started taking drugs and drinking large amounts of alcohol on a regular basis. Her parents were furious about both of these things and wanted their daughter to focus on her schoolwork, but Joanna gradually became more and more disinterested in her studies and more infatuated with John, skipping many of her classes and eventually dropping out of school altogether.
The following year, Joanna made the decision to run away from home to live with John. However, without John having a place of his own and having a fractured relationship with his parents, the pair began living in his car, in a garage, in a tent, in a forest, in train stations, and also living on an abandoned building site not far from the Dennehy family home. So, yeah, I mean, that's
How can you live in a train station? It's like that.
The waiting room?
Yeah, that works.
I mean, it's not ideal.
No.
A building site would be an abandoned building site as well. Yeah, so all of that sounds extremely hard, especially at that age. As the months went on, Joanna started to struggle with her new living situation, and so she returned to the family home. Here, she was looked after by her parents and also given money, but this didn't stop her from running away from home once again. This time, the pair started renting a flat in Luton.
We were quite mean about Luton in Bronson. Before we could say something nice about Luton.
Luton's just shithole.
Oh, okay.
This time, the pair started renting a flat in Luton before then moving into a bedsit in the Milton Keynes area. The entire time, her parents continually tried to search for their daughter and offer their support to her, but this was always rejected. Not long after the move to Milton Keynes, her relationship with John started to become highly unpredictable and violent, with Joanna regularly cheating on her boyfriend with both men and women. John recalled the following.
I'd been through a really tough time, and Joanna was bright and confident. She charmed me, but the cracks quickly started to show.
You charmed
Did it
me.
very Brent then. She charmed me.
She charmed me, but the cracks. She charmed me, but the cracks quickly started to show. She drank heavily and smoked cannabis all the time, and we began arguing. Whenever we were out, she was loud and flirted with other men. She was 17 when she gave birth to our first daughter. I loved being a dad, but she didn't take to motherhood.
So this relationship did become, very volatile very quickly. John, according to a documentary I watched, did try to, the words he used were do the right thing. And apparently when he started seeing Joanna, he went to their parents because obviously he was 20, she was 15. There was it's illegal, isn't it? It was pretty, it is.
You should know. You should know.
I do know that. Yeah.
Click, Bonds.
Don't know, Bonds don't send down that
It's
either.
illegal, isn't it? It was just fans of fun.
Obviously the age gap, it's quite...
Pedo!
Yeah. Obviously the age gap
And him.
quite... So obviously this age gap, very concerning, and he wanted to explain to Joanna's parents that nothing intimate was happening at this point. They were just in a very emotional relationship, and eventually it didn't work out. The parents were very displeased, and so they've moved into a situation where they're living on the streets, living rough, and now living in a bedsit, and they've had children together.
Yeah, I mean, from the documentary, I believe I watched the same one as you. John comes across well in this story, because I mean, you comparing him to what Joanna would go on to become. But essentially him saying I did the right thing, you're basically saying to the parents, I'm not with your daughter, but I'm grooming her.
Yeah.
I'll wait until she's of age and then it's legal, but I am essentially... It's just like a bit rank what he's doing as well.
Definitely.
But he then comes across where he is now in life, seems to be in quite a happy space. But
There was one part of an interview with him in that documentary which made me so uncomfortable, because he was trying to basically say, I got a lot of really bad press out of this. The press was saying she ran away from home when she was 14, but she didn't. She was 15 when she ran away from home. And I was like, well, that's not, John, keep quiet. That's terrible.
yeah, I mean, you've just learned that's illegal.
No. No way, Bonds. No chance. Not even for bloopers. You can send it to Dan. Another child followed just over a year later, with Joanna becoming a mother of 2 before she had left her teenage years. According to John, Joanna completely resented her new role as a parent and would regularly look for any reason to leave the bedsit. She would disappear for days at a time, leaving John to look after their children by himself. And whenever she would return to the house, she would either return drunk or high, and occasionally became violent and abusive towards her young family. Meanwhile, her own parents were desperate to meet their 2 new grandchildren, and this is horrific. But Joanna told them that they would have to pay in order to see them, which eventually caused the relationship to completely fall apart between her and her parents. But yeah.
It's a family, not a zoo, Ben.
Exactly, yeah. Terrible.
Business-minded.
No, she's not. I guess you could say she's an entrepreneur, yeah. Dragon's Den, that'd be a bit hard pitch to go. So here's the idea. I've had kids, not really close to my parents. I am a drug addict. I'm going to charge them to see him. I'm in.
Not long after this, John, Joanna and their 2 young children relocated to East Anglia. Big up East Anglia. Where there were apparently work opportunities for the pair as well as the opportunity for a fresh start. Joanna started occasionally working as a labourer on a farm, whilst John began working for a catering company. And whilst all of this initially seemed like they'd turned a corner in their life, they had a bit of a brief period of happiness, things once again only became worse for Joanna. She continued to drink heavily, often preferring to be paid in alcohol rather than cash for her labour. And she now also started to self-harm on a regular basis. She would frequently cut her arms, chest, legs and neck with razor blades, and also purchased what has been referred to as a zombie dagger, which apparently she started walking around with the dagger placed in one of her boots. From here, she allegedly told one of her only friends that she had a desire to murder someone, and she started to abuse and threaten her boyfriend on a more regular basis. John described the situation as follows.
It's hard to look back on those years and see any happiness. On the rare occasions she did look after her oldest daughter, she'd take her to throw rocks at cars and think that was bonding. She was controlling and manipulative and very occasionally violent. If it wasn't for our daughters, I'd have left.
It's like how Nelson Mutz would raise a kid. Go throw stones at cars and goblin people.
Yeah, again, to go back to the interview with John, apparently also she used to regularly play fight and wrestle with her children, but it would be especially physical in those situations. She thought that was bonding. Yeah, that's horrific.
Very odd. I mean, the odd thing is here with her parents seemingly being quite well-to-do and just wanting the best from the daughter, there isn't any reports from what we've gathered from the research, anything to do with, a blow to the head or anything like that, which could have veered her in a different direction. It seems to be just something naturally within her, which is part of the terrifying thing.
Yeah, that's what with this case really stands out compared to any other ones we've covered. It just seemed to be I guess it did seem to be a choice rather than a series of events or a big situation in her life, any trauma or anything like that.
There's more of a hunger.
Yes. In the weeks that followed, Joanna etched 4 star tattoos on her face just underneath her right eye, whilst also getting the words "Licking Legend" tattooed on her arm. So at this point, she also started working as a sex worker. From this moment onwards, the relationship with John completely deteriorated, and the house was regularly a scene of violence for her 2 young daughters. She became known to police and social services in the area, and her often public outbursts made her an extremely unpopular person with many of her neighbours.
What does licking legend mean?
Clues in the name, isn't it?
Go on then.
Licking what, though?
Yeah, what's the licking, Ben?
Lollies?
Cock.
Yes. Windows?
Pussy.
Yeah.
In that order.
Arsehole.
Oh.
Maybe a nipple, Ben?
Perhaps a nipple. Or 2. Or if you're in a really group situation.
Greedy piggy?
Yeah. That's how you become a legend.
Oh, fair play to you.
Cheers.
She'd turn up at the school gates drunk, or come home after a night out and tell me she got into fights. The police often turned up at our house because she'd been abusive in public, and she spent some time in prison for drugs and theft charges.
John and his daughters became increasingly more scared of Joanna and the toxic home environment she had created, with John believing that either the lives of his daughters or his own life was now at risk. Joanna would regularly walk around the house with a dagger tucked into her boot. Yeah, Ben's put, much like a pirate, perhaps. I think pirates just had them on their
belt,
the waist, quite weren't hiding them. Like, I'm a big tough pirate, where Joanna was a bit more like trying to hide it.
Secretive pirate.
Or just not a pirate. And a dependency on drugs and alcohol was making her behaviour completely unpredictable, perhaps like a pirate. As a result, John took his daughters away from Joanna and relocated back to the Luton area, where there's no port, leaving Joanna on her own.
Very good. I had to get away. It was heart-wrenching knowing I was taking my girls away from their mum. Even though she'd been awful, she was still their mum. I loved her, and I'd spent 10 years trying to look after her, but I couldn't do it anymore. The girls were obviously upset, but they soon found their new life more relaxing.
Joanna's life continued on a downward spiral from this point onwards. In order to fund her drug and alcohol habit, she frequently offered her services as a sex worker. She was also briefly arrested for a string of different offences, including assault, carrying a blade in public, theft and antisocial behaviour. Whilst in prison, she was assessed by a forensic psychiatrist and later diagnosed with paraphilia sadomasochism, which is sexual excitement experienced at the giving or receiving of pain, domination, or humiliation, as well as numerous underlying psychopathic traits, including rage, violence, anger, and impulsivity.
Deadly cocktail.
Yeah, definitely. And she's probably had a few, which probably made it worse. But yeah, she's apparently very violent during sex, liked to be punched. So some of the accounts I heard from her being more violent having sex, she basically would ask the man to punch her in the face as hard as he could during sex. And there was even some people that would wake up the next day and discover that she'd been basically cutting their backs whilst they slept with a blade. So she was basically up and up in the level of pain that she was inflicting. And yeah, she had really, it seems to, I know I keep saying it, but it seems to be that she has a real hunger, but just for blood and for violence and for pain. And the fact that she's linking it kind of a sexual experience as well is just even more disturbing. Following her release from prison just 14 weeks later, it is believed Joanna began to display very public suicidal tendencies, and so she was sectioned at Peterborough City Hospital, where she was diagnosed with obsessive compulsive disorder and antisocial personality disorder. During both her stint in prison and her stay in hospital, it was noted that Joanna may have also been a compulsive liar, informing other inmates and staff members that she had killed both of her parents after they had spent numerous years sexually abusing her and her sister. Obviously, this wasn't true, and both her parents were still alive.
Joanna returned to the streets of Peterborough in 2013 and did not continue with any counselling or therapy. Though she was prescribed with antipsychotic medication, it would later become clear that she stopped taking this after only a short while. She had no access to her children, her former partner, her parents, her sister, who was now enrolled in the army, or any of her former friends. She would regularly now sleep on the streets and occasionally stay with her clients. And at this point, it is believed that the lines between fantasy and reality were more blurred than ever before for Joanna. And it is here that we move to the timeline of the Peterborough Ditch murders.
In a quite bizarre series of events, 30-year-old Joanna Dennehy meets, befriends, and quickly enters a sexual relationship with 48-year-old property developer Kevin Lee. Kevin, who was described as being a happily married father of two at the time, was well liked and well known in the Peterborough area due to his company renting out rooms to the city's vulnerable and homeless people who had nowhere else to turn. As well as being given a place to stay, Joanna was given an unofficial work role as enforcer. Kevin very quickly picked up on Joanna's quite intimidating and aggressive nature and assigned her the task of threatening tenants who were behind on their rent to pay up on time. Apparently she was incredibly good at this role, and for the first time since she was a child, her life started to become more stable. All of this would change in just a matter of months. Whilst living at the property, Joanna also befriended 36-year-old Leslie Layton and 47-year-old Gary Richards, who went by the nickname Stretch, both of whom also rented rooms in the same building from Kevin. Leslie was a petty thief, while Stretch was somewhat of a career criminal, having previous convictions for theft, burglary and assault. Stretch immediately fell head over heels for Joanna, and she viewed the pair as individuals that she could easily intimidate and manipulate. There was a fourth housemate who Joanna struggled to achieve similar feats with, 56-year-old John Chapman. More on John shortly.
See a Stretch?
Yeah.
7'3".
Yes, yeah. No, it looks nothing like Stretch Armstrong. Much scarier looking than Stretch Armstrong. But those two together are very peculiar in the multiple surveillance footage of the pair. It's an interesting duo.
I just can't comprehend the height. 7'3" is insane.
I can imagine both you boys had Stretch Armstrong as a child.
I didn't. Loads of my mates had it.
Oh, thanks for that.
And Dan, you might have heard of this guy as well, Dan, but for some clarity, the Big Show, the wrestler The Big Show, is 7'2". So he's got an inch on The Big Show.
Yeah, I mean...
That's big, isn't it?
I don't think I've ever seen anyone that tall in my life, so it's pretty wild. But he's also quite in proportion. He's not like a scrawny tall guy. He's a tall guy, which is quite stocky as well.
Yeah, you'd assume Stretch would be quite sort of lanky, like Stephen Merchant. Could be called Stretch, I imagine.
He is a big boy, isn't he?
Stephen Merchant height is...
Close, I reckon.
6'7".
Wow.
Stretch, if in another walk of life, he could have been one of those guys who dress up in alien costumes and, a physical actor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'll let him know.
March 2013. Through her network of different drug dealers and clients, Joanna made another friend local to the Peterborough area. And this was 31-year-old DHL warehouse worker, Lucas Slabazeski. Lucas, who was originally from Poland, had been in the UK for 8 years, but only had a small number of friends in the area and was also battling a drug addiction as well as homelessness. After a chance meeting with Joanna, the pair exchanged phone numbers and shared a few drinks together, with Lucas even informing his friends back home that he now had a British girlfriend. From March 16th through to the 19th, Joanna began sending a series of suggestive and highly sexual messages to Lucas, eventually managing to lure him to her flat during the evening of the 19th. Lucas had sent a text message to his close friend, informing them that he was going to meet up with someone he described as my new girlfriend. He headed to Joanna's flat owned by Kevin, where the pair began to share a few drinks. As the night grew on, Joanna moved the drinks from the shared living space into her kitchen and informed Lucas that she wanted to play a game with him. And this game involved Lucas having to be blindfolded.
Once the blindfold was placed around Lucas, Joanna removed the pocket knife from her boot and stabbed him in the heart. As Lucas attempted to flee, he was attacked once again by Joanna, this time in the living room, where she proceeded to stab him several times all over the chest and neck. Lucas very quickly died as a result of blood loss. Joanna managed to do all of this in relative silence, as her housemate Stretch was asleep in the upstairs bedroom. Realising she could not move Lucas's body by herself, she woke Stretch up, apparently soaked in blood, where she asked for his help. Shockingly, perhaps as a sign of just how infatuated he was, Stretch agreed.
Yeah, there's also a possibility that she threatened Stretch and said that she would call the police and tell the police that he had killed Lucas, and that obviously looking at the size difference between the pair, the police were probably more likely to believe that Stretch was capable of this rather than Joanna. But yeah, imagine being woken up by your housemate who is covered in blood saying she just killed someone downstairs.
What would you do?
I'd be taken aback for at least a minute or so.
Would you go, I'll move it, but I'm going to miss one of that pussy? Or something similar.
Yeah, something similar.
The pair then briefly attempted to clean the area before taking Lucas's body outside and placing it in the green wheelie bin. I guess that would be the right bin, wouldn't it, Dan?
Different colours for different counties.
My county's greens for the
Garden
outdoor
material.
waste.
Yeah.
Makes sense, doesn't it?
Green top recycling, full green garden, black for
General waste. Probably go black, wouldn't you? Because of the bones.
Yeah, but more chance of crushing the bones if it goes in the back of a lorry. When it's collected.
Yeah.
Hydraulics.
Very dark. It is alleged that Joanna actually showed Lucas's body to a 14-year-old girl passing by at the time, or in fact, the 14-year-old girl actually witnessed this as it was happening. It is believed that Joanna made a very vague threat to the young girl that if she told anyone, Stretch would do the same to her. Joanna never threatened the girl directly, as she always maintained that she would never harm young girls or mothers.
4 days later, Joanna and Stretch, together with now implicated Leslie Layton, purchased a second-hand Vauxhall Astra. They drove the vehicle beside the green wheelie bin and placed Lucas's body in the back of it, before waiting until the early hours of the morning, driving to Thorney Dyke and placing the body into a roadside ditch. During this time, she allegedly continued to manipulate Stretch, informing him that she wanted the pair to be the next Bonnie and Clyde and that they were supposed to kill 9 men together. During the drive back, she informed Stretch, "This was all quite entertaining. That was fun. I want to have my fun, and I need you to get my fun."
So it seems like she got a Stretch wrapped around her finger there, a bit like the actual Stretch Armstrong. But yes, very dark. And she, as I said, the bloodlust is getting more and more so. Now she's decided, put a number on it. I want to kill more and more people in order to feed this addiction she's getting.
They don't have quite the same aura as Bonnie and Clyde. The photos that they took.
Joanna and Stretch,
yeah.
Dennehy and Stretch.
Dennehy and Stretch, yeah.
That sounds like a yoga pose. Could you do the Dennehy stretch? My dagger fell out.
28th of March 2013. Despite the frantic nature of the murder of Lucas Slabazeski, Joanna did a good enough job of cleaning up the evidence that her 56-year-old housemate, John Chapman, was unable to notice what had happened just 9 days ago. John, who was a British Navy veteran who had served in the Falklands, had fallen on hard times since his service, struggling with PTSD and an alcohol addiction. Unlike Stretch and Leslie, he didn't see eye to eye with Joanna from the moment that she moved into the property, and, because of this, Joanna seemed to have a particular hatred for him. Still on a high from what she deemed as an easy murder of Lucas, Joanna decides to attempt the same with John, but realises that he too will need some alcohol before she attempts to do so.
The early hours of the 29th of March. After playing drinking games with John for a few hours, Joanna invites him into her room. Here she continues to ply him with alcohol until the point that he passes out on her bed. As soon as this happens, Joanna pulls out her penknife and proceeds to stab John 6 times in the chest, including 2 puncture wounds to his heart. Once again, Joanna called for help from her other housemates, Stretch and Leslie, who, despite having been fond of John, helped to move his body into the back of their car before driving the corpse to Thorny Dyke and placing it in a ditch, and it was pretty much next to where they had placed Lucas's body. So whilst these 2 previous murders had occurred, Joanna at the same time was still living her day-to-day life as an enforcer and maintaining her sexual relationship with building owner Kevin Lee. Apparently, just as Joanna's previous boyfriend had, Kevin was also now growing concerned about her aggressive behaviours and had started to fear for his own life. It's also alleged that Kevin knew about the murder of Lucas and had even given the group cash to purchase the Vauxhall Astra in order to dispose of the body. There are theories that he was very much aware of what happened to Lucas, didn't want a dead body to be discovered in one of his properties, and so purchased a car to give to Joanna and Stretch to get rid of Lucas's bodies. But it depends which narrative you believe there. Either way, Joanna sent Kevin a text message shortly after the group had disposed of John's body, and she had informed him that she wanted to see him. As quite a dark insight into the relationship she had with Kevin, Joanna messaged him saying she, quote, wanted to dress him up and rape him later. Instead of meeting at the block of flats, Joanna suggested that the pair meet up at one of his other properties, and this was an unrented house in Ralston Garth. Despite fearing for his own safety and perhaps even knowing that Joanna was now a murderer, Kevin reluctantly agreed to meet.
What happens next is not entirely clear, but it's assumed that the black outfit we're about to discuss was placed on Kevin prior to the murder, rather than afterwards. Once Joanna arrives at the property, the pair share a drink, before they move things to the bedroom. Kevin is then placed in a black sequins dress, before Joanna proceeds to deliver the promise that she had texted him earlier that day. Midway through, Joanna would pull out a knife and proceed to stab Kevin several times in the heart and lungs. With Kevin dying within minutes due to the wounds, soon after, Stretch and Leslie arrive at the property, help Joanna place the corpse into the back of Kevin's own car, and drive once again to Thorny Dyke. This time, the group decide to head past the previous area of disposal and instead place Kevin's body in a ditch 8 miles away, not far from a motorway service station in Newborough. Unlike the previous victims, it appears that Kevin's corpse was specifically left in a sexually suggestive pose, still in the black sequin dress.
Yeah, this is particularly callous, and it's now she's obviously saying to Stretch that she wants to get her fun, and as Tom mentioned earlier in the episode, hunger. She seemed to have a hunger for murder at this point, and it's not only is she killing people, she's brutally stabbing them multiple times to death, all over the body, the face, the neck, and it's quite a fury involved in her actions,
and just the humiliation afterwards, isn't it? It's the families that are going to, when their bodies are found, you basically put them in a sequins dress, left them in a sexually suggestive pose. There's no respect for the body whatsoever. You're, if anything, wanting to inflict more pain on the family members and afterwards, and that's your sick little game.
Yeah, Kevin's family. It's so heartbreaking to see. I didn't manage to find any interviews with Kevin's wife, but there's Kevin's sister-in-law, I believe, brother-in-law as well, that all make statements, and that you can see that the entire family not only learning that he was murdered, that he was brutally murdered, that this happened to his body, and that also there was an affair going on. And it's just to learn that all at once is unimaginable for what that family had to go through.
30th of March 2013. The following morning, the body of Kevin Lee is discovered by a dog walker, who immediately calls the police. Police immediately link the dead body to a burnt out and abandoned car that had been reported on farmland in the Yaxley area. Operation Darcy is immediately launched by Cambridgeshire Police. From investigating both areas, it quickly became clear that a mobile phone belonging to Joanna Dennehy had been pinged in close proximity to both locations. This, together with information obtained from Kevin's wife, who had apparently been made aware of his affair with Joanna just hours before he was murdered, immediately made Joanna Britain's most wanted woman.
So again, to go back to Kevin's wife, and again, it's not completely clear the extent of how much she knew about this situation between Kevin and Joanna, but apparently what she started doing is looking at telephone bills and looking at numbers that Kevin had been calling or sending text messages to. And she was worried about his whereabouts, that the fact that he hadn't come home from work, and started calling through these numbers. And one of them was the mobile belonging to Joanna, which apparently rang, but was connected briefly, then disconnected. So she didn't speak on the phone with Joanna, but apparently that's what caused the ping to happen. So without that situation, you don't necessarily get Joanna attached to this scene of crime. Again, I feel so bad for the Lee family.
Cambridgeshire police head straight to the block of flats owned by Kevin that they believe Joanna to be living in. Joanna is nowhere to be found, but they do find a heavily bloodied mattress leaning against a wall in the back garden. Upon further investigation of the mattress, the DNA taken does not match the blood of Kevin Lee. Later in the evening, Leslie Layton arrives back at the flats, but plays dumb to the police's questioning regarding his deceased landlord, the bloody mattress in the garden, and the location of Joanna Dennehy. Upon searching Leslie's room, police soon realise that the man is lying, as they discover photographs of the corpse of John Chapman, Leslie's former housemate, in his possession. When they inform Leslie that he's being arrested on suspicion of murder, he quickly explains that Joanna did it, and that he only helped to dispose of the body due to fears for his own life. He informs them that the same thing had occurred on 2 other occasions.
2nd of April. So whilst all of this is happening, Kevin Lee's wife is contacting police, Leslie is now being interrogated, Joanna and Stretch had gone on the run as a nationwide manhunt was beginning to close in around them. To fund their escape, the pair robbed multiple shops and petrol stations, even stealing a camera to take photos of one another with. And this is, where you get the very Bonnie and Clyde vibe. They're striking similar poses, exposing their chests in a similar pose, and you can see all of the years of self-harm to Joanna's body. You can see Stretch trying to sort of mimic that pose as well. It's all a bit bizarre. Then you get the infamous photo of Joanna holding the dagger to her mouth. Alerts are issued all over the UK, and in case you hadn't guessed, Stretch wasn't exactly hard to miss. He was heavily built and stood 7 foot 3 inches tall and towered over his petite companion. The pair regularly were caught on different CCTV surveillance together, in one instance holding hands, and he's almost twice the size of her. So despite the growing search for them, the pair did not appear to be hurried or panicked in any way. Very calm, the laughing and joking, not under any concern whatsoever in terms of them being recognised. They were, very laid back. So the pair travel 155 miles to the town of Kington, Herefordshire, where Stretch reunites with former accomplice and fellow career criminal Mark Lloyd. So apparently the reason why Stretch wanted to bring Mark in was so that he could help to sell on their stolen goods that they had accumulated during their road trip. But Stretch also asked if he could help potentially keep the pair in hiding. Joanna immediately overruled this decision and said that the pair had to keep moving. So Mark apparently was forced to get into the car, and immediately tensions were clear between Joanna and Mark.
Joanna is very quick to inform Mark that she had just killed 3 men and that she was desperate to kill more. She said all this whilst downing whiskey in the backseat of the car and waving her dagger around. As the group drive to the centre of Hereford, they make a stop at a pawn shop. Erotic. They make a stop at a pawn shop to sell some stolen goods before later stopping at a shop to buy cigarettes. Whilst all of this is happening, Joanna is becoming increasingly erratic and even more unpredictable, apparently unable to stand or sit still while she appears to bounce around in a trance. She begins to demand that Stretch find her another victim, and he very quickly points at the first person that he sees.
So when they went into this shop to get cigarettes, it's Joanna and Mark that go in, and they all look like they're sort of doing what I would call a standing spoon, a standing cuddle. Joanna has her arms sort of wrapped around Mark from the rear, but apparently she actually had a knife in his back at the point that he went to check out, and then started flirting with the woman at the checkouts and making her do like a 360 turn so they could see all of her. And it's the CCTV footage of that is really uncomfortable.
So enough about the standing spoon. We're just going to get back to the case. Stretch pointed at 63-year-old retired firefighter Robin Bariza, who was just 100 yards into an afternoon dog walk. Joanna waited for Robin to pass the group before she savagely attacked him from behind. She stabbed him twice in the upper body, causing him to fall to the floor, clutching his wounds, before calmly returning to Stretch and demanding a 5th victim. Once again, Stretch pointed at the first person he could see, and once again, it was another dog walker, 56-year-old John Rogers. Joanna waited for John to pass the group before launching it into a vicious attack. She started by stabbing him in the back several times and knocking him to the floor, before repeatedly stabbing him in the chest and arms as he tried to protect himself. Joanna stabbed John a staggering total of 40 separate times, puncturing both of his lungs before stealing his dog, a whippet called Archie, and getting back in the car and fleeing. The one miracle of this case is that both John and Robin's lives were saved by emergency services, despite their serious injuries. Whilst John Rogers was rushed to hospital, he claimed that his attacker had said, "Oh look, you're bleeding. I'd better do some more," during the stabbing.
Fucking hell.
And it's just, they happened to be in that town at that time. The first person Stretch was pointed to, and that Mark, who is, there's interviews with Mark as well. Mark's just watching this whole thing happen from the back of the car, and he's still traumatized by these events, more than 10 years later. It's terrifying.
Went a bit faint there, genuinely. Weird.
Ooh.
Just thinking about a collapsed lung.
No, not just one, two of them.
Yeah.
Very wheezy.
Yeah.
Just over an hour later, unbelievably, the group parked in front of Moreish shops in order to get some dinner together. That is unbelievable. Police surrounded the vehicle and immediately arrested all three of them, with no resistance being shown by any member of the group. Joanna was taken to a local police station, where she was caught on camera laughing, joking, and even flirting with police officers at the station. She also casually made racist remarks, showing absolutely no remorse and complete calmness from her recent actions. By the time she was detained, it was revealed that the blade of her pocket knife was blunt and stained black with dried blood. One anonymous police source said that Joanna had started to smell of blood. What the fuck? One anonymous police source said that Joanna had started to smell of blood, whichever room or cell she was moved to.
So yeah, that's absolutely horrific. Stained black with dried blood made me feel really sick. And a note on Archie, the dog, as well. Archie was returned to his family. The first thing I thought is she going to do something awful to the dog? I think she had a previous conviction on mishandling an aggressive dog, or owning an aggressive dog. But yeah, Archie was returned to his family. Joanna, whilst they were processing her, made the following remark.
Attempted murder and murder is nothing. It's like going down for a Sunday roast. Easy.
Which makes no real sense, and it just stinks of her trying to be cool with the police and trying to bat as if she's so nonchalant. I mean, yeah, from her body language and her flirting and doing all this chat, she's just trying to show off and going to get them on side, but it's just a fucking stupid thing to say. Like, it's not, obviously it's no way cool, but it's just makes no sense.
And she was, this whole time flirting with the officers that were processing her. She was saying, "Oh, you handled everything perfectly. You're a great copper.
Now handle this."
Yeah. And then they just took her to a cell.
Then what?
I wasn't there, I don't know. As she was taken to a holding cell, Joanna was overheard singing the song Singing in the Rain. And apparently whilst she was doing this, she was swaying from side to side. Her parents were then informed of her arrest, and this was the first time that her parents knew of their daughter's whereabouts in more than 10 years. Whilst Joanna was held in custody, the bodies of John Chapman and Lucas Slabazeski were found, and their families were notified. Forensic investigations of Joanna's old flat, as well as post-mortems conducted on the bodies, suggested that both men had experienced long, painful and sustained deaths. Sadly, John Rogers, who had survived 40 stab wounds from Joanna's attack, passed away the following year in November of 2014, and it's believed that his death was linked to complications as a result of his injuries. So yeah, that's just absolutely horrific.
Unbearably sad.
Yes, yeah. The fact that it was just completely random and she had a desire. She was saying literally Stretch point to anyone, not a woman, not a child, but any man.
Yeah, I think that's the thing with this case, which is different as well to a lot of cases. Obviously, one of those stats that everyone throws out there, you're more likely to be killed by someone you know than, complete stranger. Complete stranger attacks are very rare. And it's just the violence and even with one of these, I believe when she was stabbing them, she then turned him over so she could stab him from the front. And it's just the absolute, hunger for inflicting pain on people and just innocent people in broad daylight. It's truly it's terrifying.
Well, that's it as well, because if they hadn't decided to stop and get some food and just park up casually, you dread to think how many other attacks might have happened.
Yeah.
And the fact that she's got Stretch with her as well, a giant of a man, but he's not getting involved in the attacks. He's helping with the disposing of the bodies, but she's doing pretty much this off, the attacks off her own back completely. And that's, terrifying. The other women whole life tariffs that Dan mentioned in the intro as well, they are predominantly child killers, baby killers, killers of women and young girls. They're not attacking and killing full-grown men, and that's what makes this case for me just so bizarre. But then once she's arrested, even more bizarre shit starts to happen. So it's
May 2013, Joanna was charged with all 3 murders as well as 2 attempted murders and remanded in custody pending a trial. During her time held in remand, she was held in segregation in HMP Bronzefield. Just a month into her stay here, prison staff found an escape plot written in her diary which involved killing and or amputating a prison officer, cutting off one of their fingers and using the amputated finger to essentially bypass the biometric system in the prison. Because of this discovery, Joanna was placed in solitary confinement, which she claims left her tearful and upset and wanting to self-harm. She appealed to the High Court of Justice that her human rights had been violated, but, unsurprisingly, it was rejected. Writing up a plot to escape in your diary in a prison.
not just, digging out or jumping over a fence or something like that.
Excuse me? Digging out?
Digging out of prison. Shawshank style,
Oh, sorry.
Andy Dufresne.
Andy Dufresne.
This is...
the sister's guardian.
Somehow amputating a prison staff's arm, hand, finger, whatever way she was planning on doing this, to then try and just hold it against a little scanner.
It says finger on your...
Does say finger. Well, you'd need the finger, wouldn't you, eventually?
Oh, yeah,
just
yeah.
If she's got...
At least.
I was thinking if she goes there with a full arm, hand and finger and holds it out sort of from a distance, or just go straight, little finger, just hold it down with her thumb.
Never the little finger, just probably the index.
Yeah, more to scan. But it's horrific, yeah.
Yes, it is. November 2013, the trial of Joanna Dennehy begins at the Old Bailey. It is revealed that prison psychiatrists had diagnosed Joanna with psychopathy and borderline personality disorder. It was revealed that Joanna had a clear goal of killing 9 men, but sparing any children or mothers, in an effort to be somewhat like Bonnie and Clyde, who killed 13 men. She claimed that she had gotten a taste for it during her first murder and that it was Moreish. During the trial, Mark Lloyd testified against Joanna and Stretch, whilst prosecutors also revealed the extent of Leslie's involvement. Joanna could regularly be heard giggling during testimonies, and at one point, she stood up and addressed the court by saying the following.
Do you want me to giggle as well?
Yeah, I think you should.
I've pleaded guilty and that's that. I've pleaded guilty and that's that. I don't want to be controlled by anybody. I don't want to be controlled by my lawyers, the police, by anybody.
On the 21st of November, Joanna Dennehy was found guilty of 3 counts of murder and 2 counts of attempted murder amongst a flurry of other charges. She was sentenced to a whole life tariff by Judge Justice Spencer, who described her as a cruel, calculating, selfish and manipulative sadomasochist serial killer who completely lacks the normal range of human emotions. She was the 3rd woman to be sentenced to a whole life tariff after Myra Hindley and Rose West, with Lucy Letby recently becoming the 4th.
February 2014. Despite trying to claim that they were fearing for their own lives, Gary Stretch Richards received a life sentence with a minimum term of 19 years, whilst Leslie Layton received a 14-year sentence. A man named Robert Moore, who lied to police about Joanna's whereabouts and also allowed her and Stretch to stay at his house the night after Kevin Lee's murder, was sentenced to 3 years for assisting an offender. At around the same time, it was revealed that Joanna was actually on probation at the time of the murders for offences of assault and owning a dangerous dog. The probation service later put this down to, quote, untrained staff that were dealing with her case. David Wilson, Professor of Criminology at Birmingham City University, summed up the Peterborough Ditch murders case as follows.
This case is unique and unprecedented. Serial killers disengage from the process of killing and revert to their normal life. There was never any sense of her disengaging. She seems to have constantly been in the moment of killing. It creates a world in which even the most extraordinary ideas and behaviours are seen as being permissible. So often, it is the woman who follows the worldview of the more dominant male partner. In this case, Dennehy was the dominant partner and Stretch accommodated her worldview.
So now we're going to move over to the aftermath, and things get even slightly more unbelievable from here.
So as we mentioned at the beginning of the episode, she has been described as one of Britain's most dangerous inmates, certainly one of the most dangerous whole-life tariffs. And there is a criminologist and author by the name of Christopher Berry D, who jumped out at me straight away because he's wearing one of those, like sort of Texan bolo neckties, which I thought is quite a look. But he has come face to face with around 30 different serial killers during his career and interviewed them at length. He's met with Ted Bundy, Rose West, many other killers. He describes Dennehy as the most dangerous person he's ever come into contact with. And I thought that's quite a reference.
Definitely. In 2018, Joanna requested permission from prison officials to marry her cellmate, Hayley Parker, who was in prison for robbery. Apparently still in her heart as well. This was much to the dismay of Hayley Parker's family, who believed she was in imminent danger upon learning of this. What's your thoughts, guys, about if you're in prison having the right to get married and stuff like that? Or do you think that's something that should be taken away from someone if they've done such heinous things?
Good question.
After you, Ben.
I would, for this level of crime, anyone on either a whole life or life sentence, I think they should not be allowed. I think these rights should be left at the prison gates.
Yeah, I agree. Rights should be stripped when you've done something that bad.
What about you, Tommy?
I'd rather not say.
Oh.
I also do agree. I think rehabilitation is definitely something I believe in, but yeah, not with someone who's serving a whole life tariff or anything like that. If they're being punished for something they've done, certain things should be taken away as part of the punishment. You know, that's the life you decided to lead, and yeah, you shouldn't be granted the rights of innocent civilians, essentially.
The other thing that confused me about this situation is I don't know if there are additional crimes added to this, but this Hayley Parker was this robbery. It was quite a long, I think she got 16 years for some sort of sentence of robbery, some act of robbery. And I just feel like putting a serial killer or a spree killer in with someone that's, again, I need to educate myself a bit more about Hayley Parker, but someone that's in for robbery, a long sentence for robbery, so God knows what she stole or if she hurt someone whilst doing that. But I just feel like that congregation there is a bit bizarre to me as well. I think
someone who's got a history of violence and attacking people unprovoked, the fact that she's mixing with people is odd. Obviously, we know her MO was not attacking women; it was literally just men. But I mean, you wouldn't put it past her, would you? So yeah, I think you're right. It's odd that they're letting them mix. Just a quick trigger warning here. For the next 20 seconds or so, I'm going to be discussing attempting suicide. So if you want to skip that 20 seconds, by all means. Later that year, the pair tried to bring an end to their lives as part of a suicide pact. However, this was ultimately prevented when guards rushed them to medical facilities within the prison. Joanna having cut her throat and Hayley having slashed both of her wrists, both survived and were briefly separated in different sections of the prison.
In 2019, the documentary The Killer in My Family was released, and this is one that features extensive interviews with Joanna's first boyfriend and the father of her two daughters. And yeah, it's quite an eye-opener, especially to get his perspective. As Tom says, there are some things that he says that are completely bizarre, and yeah, the fact that he got offended that they stated she was 15 when she left home, not 14, that's wrong. Still feel a bit uncomfortable watching him speak at times, but it is definitely worth a watch, and fascinating insight. And it's good to know that her daughters have been able to live somewhat of an ordinary life despite the notoriety of what their mother did. Later on in 2019, Joanna was moved from HMP Bronzefield to HMP Low Newton Prison. And this is where another very infamous female whole-life tariffer was serving, Rosemary West. And it's claimed by Joanna, again, we mentioned earlier in the episode that she had been described as a potential compulsive liar by prison psychiatrists, that when she arrived at this prison, she made very public promises to kill Rose West, who was moved as a result to a different prison, which was HMP New Hall in Wakefield. The British government has actually gone as far as to claim that this is not the case and it was just a coincidence that Rose was moved to a different prison. But Joanna has wrote numerous letters to state that she made very public threats to say that she was going to kill Rose West. At the same time, HMP Low Newton, where Joanna was staying, did also briefly hold whole-life tariffer Lucy Letby until January of 2024, when she was then moved to HMP Bronzefield.
In 2020, it was reported that Joanna was in a new relationship with another prisoner. This time, Emma Aitken, a 25-year-old woman serving a 12-year sentence for her role in the murder of a man whose body was dumped outside a nightclub. Though this relationship may have been short-lived, as Joanna's ex-partner, Hayley Parker, was released from prison in 2021 after serving her 16-year sentence, and the pair were believed to have gotten married under Hayley's condition that no more blood is shed.
So that was the case of Joanna Dennehy, the Peterborough ditch murders. Yeah, a very different case to ones we've covered before, particularly female killers, cases that we've covered before. It's really hard to kind of pinpoint a motive. It seemed to be that she had a pure desire to harm or a hunger to harm, and simply felt like once she'd started, she just wanted more. There was no identifiable red flags from her childhood. Parents, did as much as they could for her until her teenage years, when things changed when she entered the relationship with John. But yeah, a very disturbing and upsetting case, and one that we hope, if you made it to the end of, that you enjoyed.
Found it interesting?
That you found interesting. Thank you, Tom.
And yes, guys, I thought this series, I wanted to bring a new little segment in.
Ooh.
Well, introducing Tom's VIPs.
Very interesting people.
Oh, VIPs. And yeah, this is very interesting people, basically. This is my idea. This is a little segment where I like to not condemn a place by the evil person that come from there. So the fact that this absolute heinous bitch came from it all happened in the Peterborough area. I want to talk about someone from that area who, is a very interesting person, and just shed that there's a light, that there's also some legends that come out of that place as well.
Brilliant.
So this week's Noz's VIP is Walter Cornelius, and he was born in April 1924. So Walter, hands up, wasn't actually born in Peterborough, but he's very much thought of as a local hero of quite an eccentric man of the area. Ben, I think you'll enjoy him.
Oh, okay.
So he escaped the Iron Curtain and settled in Peterborough. He got there by swimming the Baltic Sea. During his escape, he was shot by the guards and hit to the stomach, but was still able to escape.
Bloody hell.
Yeah, he would actually go on to become a lifeguard later on in life.
Oh, Dan.
Good man.
You think that's bad? But this wasn't the thing that made him such a local ledge. He actually loved adrenaline, did our Walter, and a bit of the spotlight. So it's led him to become a bit of a daredevil.
Oh.
So he started to do some stunts, just to entertain people, get people talking about him. The first one he used to do was pushing a pea through the city with his nose.
Wow.
What?
That would be so hard. I couldn't actually find out how far he pushed the pee, but I'm imagining it's further than just a few steps, but that'd be well hard.
Yeah.
Get
too
your
hard.
nose. You'd have to go sideways, wouldn't you? Sideways, sort of to get your nose close to the ground.
Did the roll. I'll drink no longer rolls, I think.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
If you're not watching the visuals, you just saw all three of us demonstrating how we would do it. The other one he used to do, which is this one's a bit more of a daredevil stunt, he would let people use a sledgehammer to break a slab of concrete that he had on his head.
On his head?
Yes. And he actually did this on Blue Peter in 1967. So maybe we can show a little clip of that. Because he was a bit of a strong man as well, so he was a big guy, big tough guy, but I don't know when you discovered that skill.
It sounds like there was a guy, it was all over social media, like an artist that pushed a big block of ice around Mexico for like 9 hours until it melted, and then he titled it
Waste of time?
Sometimes making something leads to nothing, and it's just him pushing this giant block of ice around Mexico.
Oh, is this like an art piece?
I think it was an art piece, or it was a thing about global warming.
Bollocks.
Or both.
Oh, that's right then.
Both. Yeah.
He'd also walk on his hands for miles, which again, that's fucking incredible as
I
well.
wish I could do that, to be fair.
Yeah, that's a skill that I wouldn't mind having. I don't know when you'd ever use it, but it's also interesting. But one of the things that really got people's attention, and he was nicknamed the Daredevil Birdman, was basically something he'd do it annually. He would attempt to fly across the River Nine by wearing a bird suit and flapping huge wings attached to his arms. Though he was never successful, and everyone knew he was never going to be successful, it would draw lots of crowds to come and watch him do this task, and it's just a bit more entertaining for the general public. So I just wanted to salute Walter Cornelius. You are now Noza VIP. Welcome.
Wow. You don't get too
Fantastic.
many stuntmen these days, do you?
No. I mean, the only guy I can think of is actually that whoop whoop.
Oh, superhuman.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's just the same stunt over and over again, essentially. Just
What
flipping.
about Felix Baumgartner?
Oh, the space diver guy. Skydive.
I mean, that's pretty epic, isn't it?
I'm thinking more along the lines of like Evel Knievel sort of stuff. I'm sure there are
Right.
shows that
Yeah.
travel the country.
Classic Daredevil.
Yeah. But that was cool, Tom. That was really cool. Good look into
Thank
him.
you, Tom.
And we'll be back next week with a brand new Noza's VIP. So looking forward to seeing who we meet next week.
Yeah.
And yes, guys, I think it's time for Ben's cryptic clue.
Benjamin Carter's cryptic clues. Everyone gather round for some clues that can be quite cryptic, but he's going to give them to you anyway. Hope you can figure them out.
Welcome back. Yeah, I know, Cool and the gang and Brian tried to warn you Joanna Dennehy. The Joanna track is good. I'm sure you guys will recognise it if maybe we'll play it at the party. If you can both hopefully make it, that would be...
Maybe make an invite. I've been hounding you for it and you fucking haven't done it.
Okay, it's done. Okay, right. Dan, you'll like this one because you're in my cryptic clue. Next week... Oh, you might hate it, Dan. Next week, producer Dan makes music with Harry Potter's bladder. Producer Dan makes music with Harry Potter's bladder.
That's actually quite good. It's fun.
Yeah.
It doesn't quite make sense.
It does.
I get no. I know you don't have to explain it to me, but part of it doesn't really make total sense.
Sure, there's a trick where it's Eos, Alavolucius.
So you knew exactly the part I meant. That's one of the better ones. I think people will get that one, to be fair. But yes, we'll be back next week with a brand new case, a very interesting case, another one that has split people's opinions. And it's been in the headlines not too long ago, so I'm sure you guys would be interested to hear about that.
And we just wanted to say a huge thank you for watching or listening to this episode, taking the time to consume a bit of ICMAP. We really do appreciate it. And we wanted to do a special shout out to the wonderful people that have been supporting us on both our website as well as Apple Podcasts, where right now, icmap.co.uk, we have 170 or so extra special and exclusive minisodes where we've covered recent quite tragic cases: the death of Owen Hart, the murder of Breck Bednar, and the Mary Vincent case. So you can check those episodes out, as well as all of our merchandise and monthly live streams over at icmap.co.uk.
All right, guys, we'll be back again next week with a fresh new case. And until then, like we always, or we've been known to say,
we say this all the time:
keep doing what you're doing.
Don't be forcing geeks to do your homework or bullying them into it, or manipulating Stretch. He was after love, and
he's doing a long stretch now.
He is. Yeah.
If you're going to push a pea with your nose, just be careful.
Yeah.
Make sure the surface you're doing it on, ideally, I'll probably say the cobbled streets, you're fucked. So be careful.
Yeah. That can't have been more than...
It can't be face down.
25 metres.
Maybe we'll do a video at the barbecue of you guys trying to do it. And whoever wins, that'd be a good little race. Take ages, but anyway. Until next time, take care. All the best to Pip.